Hey guys, hope you are all having a great start to the week. It is Thanksgiving week and there is a lot to expect this week, so be sure to check the video I made yesterday so that you guys are as prepared as possible for everything. I will link the video for you guys in the comments down below as well for your convenience. Today's topic is a bright one, as it shows it isn't only Americans who are beginning to see the extent reaches of Wall Street's never-ending appetite to own and destroy housing for everyone in the world. As pandemic evictions have kept rising with no ending in sight, Spaniards are slowly taking aim at the hands manufacturing their demise, and have no declared war on Wall Street. I want to thank Nicholas Casey and Roser Toll Parafa for their amazing contribution in covering and digging through all the amalgam of stories and information that inspired me to make this video in the first place. And a special thank you to all the Spaniards out there, raging war out against the disgusting being at Wall Street, whose never-ending desire for more continues to devastate communities, cities and entire countries. Before we start, let me quickly state that I am not a financial advisor, and that all content discussed in this channel is simply information gathered that I deem important for people to know, so that they can make informed decisions. All efforts are aimed to better understand the nature of the current market in anticipation of the greatest squeeze in financial history. Let's get started. Neighborhoods in Barcelona are not unlike those here in America. Mothers walk their children to school, fathers go to work, the same symbolic lifestyle that has become so ingrained in us. However, it doesn't take much before you start noticing the cracks in the fabric of their society. A huge disparity in how normal rent is taking place across the neighborhoods, and is starting to spread across Barcelona and the rest of Spain. Building owners aren't your typical landlord, but rather private equity firms located thousands of miles away across the Atlantic Ocean. With a crippling economy, many families are finding themselves struggling to pay rent, and have collectively agreed to occupy the buildings where they have been, refusing to leave even when tenants evict them. Because entire groups collectively agree to stay where they are without leaving, landlords have little to no options left but to let them, since authorities cannot kick entire families out of homes all day. Though they aren't working as a coordinated group, they are still working collectively with one single goal: to pressure Wall Street to exit the Spaniard markets so that rents can go back down to normal levels again. I was criticized many times for being apparently hyperbolic when I made statements saying there was no end to the greed of Wall Street, when I said that they would not rest until they took home ownership of everyone in the world where they could, and it did not take long for us to find out that their gaze has been set on Spain as well. These defiant protests taking place across Spain are part of a war also wagging on the courtrooms, living rooms and even the streets of Barcelona. Investment firms, a ton which are on Wall Streets, have now been pitted against thousands of residents and activists who are using plenty of novel strategies to try to stop them from evicting renters who continue to fall behind. Cerberus, along with other popular companies such as Blackstone and Lone Star, have been greedily buying up every property that seemed suitable since the global financial crisis of 2008. A big misunderstanding is that 2008 weakened Wall Street enough to get them to back down for a while. The truth is that Wall Street used that economic global crisis they themselves caused, and took opportunity to get advantage of the weak real estate market, buying tons of homes that they have been renting ever since, denying generations of future home ownership in America, in Spain and in many other countries around the world. The current situation further worsened when the pandemic pushed the Spanish unemployment rate up to 15%, spiking evictions during the first half of 2021. Investment firms quickly became agitated at the situation, and instead of showing a little understanding and attempting to help the situation, they instead opted to have the landlords and staff slew eviction notices to tenants across Spain, and even canceling leases for those who fell behind on rent, with no exceptions. Now, in the streets of Barcelona, a group who called themselves the War Against Cerberus has decided to band together and fight back. When fancy lawyers contracted by private equity firms in Wall Street come knocking on the doors with police officers to evict people, members of the group quickly react, surrounding the building to block their entry. While residents are being pushed out of their house or apartment, the groups send huge groups of people to occupy properties owned by firms elsewhere in the city, sometimes breaking into the property to gain entrance. When interviewed, some people belonging to the War Against Cerberus explained how dozens of families have occupied some of the buildings owned by the Wall Street. They explained the systematic loopholes that these private equity firms have been exploiting to provoke further distress in the economy, allowing them to benefit greatly at the expense of the common folk. In fact, the problems are so bad, some members described Wall Street's approach to housing as if it were any other asset, which is a sentiment I have actually mentioned as well. They treat the housing market like it's the stock market, which is why every time they get over-involved in it, some huge housing crisis follows. These problems are getting increasingly out of hand, with more people joining groups like the War Against Cerberus, because it is the only option, the only outlet to protest and be heard, and the Spanish government is now being forced to listen. With an ever-increasing group that is not paying rent and not being evicted without huge protests that halt the city, the sitting government is now proposing the imposition of new legislation that will have them oversee rent controls of investment funds and other large landlords. The new proposals will apparently cap rents for owners with more than 10 properties in areas when rent increases have outpaced inflation. We talk about inflation all the time on this channel, and how crazy it has grown. The housing situation is so bad that it has even passed inflation levels, which really cements just how out of control this all really is. With problems that were bad even before the pandemic have now gotten much worse and dire, and housing activists want to civilize the markets, a common sentiment that I think we as Americans can relate completely. Interviewing some housing activist leaders, they attribute much of the increased evictions to investment firms that continually and habitually refuse to negotiate agreements with rents who fall behind, choosing instead to give them the boot and kick them out on the streets. Spain had imposed their version of partial moratorium, but it only applied to a very small number of citizens in incredibly dire vulnerable situations, such as a single mother with a baby. A look at the origins of these groups and activists show that their roots lie all the way back to 2008, when homeowners were hit the hardest and were the most affected, driving many of them into bankruptcies. Countless people lost their homes no matter how much the government tried to remedy the situation. The crisis led to resentment, and protests grew along with activists, who are now trying to protect what little they have, which isn't even their property, against the new predatory loans that Wall Street is trying to subjugate them into. Since Wall Street hit homeowners back in 2008, now they are taking aim at renters, which is a topic I warned about last week. If you think you are safe renting property, renting a rooftop to sleep under, think again, for the eye of Wall Street never rests trying to find a way to extract all your money and kick you to the curb. If you don't believe me, let me give you a glimpse into what the future holds for us in America by looking at what happened with Spain. With so many thousands of people turned renters, defaults became extremely common and good credit harder to come by since the economy has also fallen. The number of renters, therefore, has risen by more than 40% over the last decade. Let me repeat that for you in case you think you misheard it. The amount of renters in Spain has grown more than 40% over the last decade. At the same time this has happened, private firms have amassed at least 40,000 properties across Spain. Blackstone has now become the biggest landlord in all of Spain, and has recently bought more than 1,800 properties from the Madrid city government, which were experiencing problems with cash. In other words, Blackstone paid cash for 1,800 properties in Spain that they intend to rent and extort its citizens to pay. During the first quarter of 2021, evictions of renters in Spain rose by 14% compared to the same period past year. By the second quarter, the number grew by 8 times as many as in the same period last year. As such, these activists are nothing more than survivors trying to protect themselves and their fellow brethren from essentially homelessness. Wall Street is coming for every penny, for every coin you might have. Calling them vultures when lawyers, landlords and the police show up, the group is playing a hard offensive, quickly gathering and planning protests that make chaos of the entire situation in order to draw the eye of the government. We are talking about men, about women and about children here. I found so many correlations listening to some of the statements these protesters, these guardians of their cities, shared. Much like the apes in America, and the ants in Asia, these groups are slowly rising, bringing attention about Wall Street, private equity and their never-exhausting desire to turn everything against the little guy so that they can make an extra buck. They hold together, much like we do with stocks, so that everyone can survive. Their cries for justice, to be heard, resonated with me. A group of legendary and exemplary fighters these activists are. War Against Cerberus is their name, and I hope the absolute best for all of them and all other groups rising from the slumps of society. Wall Street is an abomination that must be exposed and destroyed. They stand for nothing but themselves, and are looking to take advantage of all loopholes to devastate entire countries in the sake of profits. I hope to have opened some eyes in here. Though I have almost no Spaniards in my subscriber audience, I do have plenty of Americans. If you think what is happening in Spain won't happen here, I dare you to take a walk in your city and neighborhoods and look around, talk to people and ask. Take a look through some of my playlists of this channel, where I expose what Wall Street is doing across our neighborhoods. Spain should serve as a tale of what will happen if we do no fight back, if we do not talk and simply elect to ignore the problems. Do no sit back and rest easy, because someone at a private equity firm is working while you sleep to take what you have and leave you in the street. Hope to have opened some eyes. Let me know if you liked the video. If you want to support this channel, I have a Patreon link in the description as well as some one-time donation links for Cash App and PayPal. Thank you again for being a part of this channel. I will continue striving for better content. Hope you keep having a great day and I hope to see you later today on the recap video. Until then, keep on buying the dip and to the moon.